Here was Classic DM, and we're back with a video for you from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. The nostalgia never ends. This year is my 60th birthday. Wow. I started playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons right off the basic edition, like way back in 1978. Can you believe that? Played on again, off again for years. And this book is one of the coolest books they ever put together. But there's a really funny thing about it, because everyone thinks this is a book like a monster manual. Like you're supposed to go in here and start killing all these gods and goddesses. And you know what? We did that when we were 12, but that's not really what the book is really about. But what I want to do is jump into this book and show you some of the really cool stuff that's in here that most people actually really don't even realize, and how to use it as a dungeon master. Like I said a moment ago, when we first started playing, we were using this box set, and it came out, before that, Dungeons & Dragons was all these little books like this. This was the first God, Demigods, and Heroes book. This is like 1976, okay? So it's really, really old. And these were the same size little books as Mark Miller's Little Black Books, Traveler, like A4 size, or what? That's not right. That's not right. They were like little booklet size, like half the size of a piece of 8.5 by 11 notebook paper, printer paper. Anyway, we started playing the game out of this box set, and the classes were completely different. Everything was very different. But in 1978, the Monster Manual, or it was late 1977, the Monster Manual came out first. So we're using this rule set, but we're using all the crazy monsters from the Monster Manual, and then we start buying the modules that TSR was creating, and then they released the Player's Handbook the next year. I think I got my copy. It came out in June of '78, and I got my copy in I think it was in the fall. I was playing football in a little league with kids and stuff like that. And so it was really a lot of fun to get that book and just read through it back to back every night after school. But let's get into the actual book, and let's talk about some of the cool stuff that's in here that most people never really know. All right, so you can get this in PDF. I have never researched if you can get this as print on demand. It's kind of a funny thing. If you know that, leave a comment below. You can go to DriveThruRPG, find the book, and see, do they offer a print on demand version. If they do, it's probably not a hardback version like the 2012 reprints. It's probably like a softback, kind of like they did with Fiend Folio, another one of my favorite books. But let's go into this. We're not going to read you the whole book. That's kind of ridiculous. But I want to show you a couple of key details here. And that's going to mean we're going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to grab this here and go down. You have all the introduction. You have all the different mythologies that are covered in the book. For those of you who never bought this book, you should get it. American Indian, Arthurian heroes, Babylonian mythos, Celtic, Central American, Chinese, Cthulhu, Egyptian, Finnish, Greek, Indian, Japanese, and Melibonian, which is from Elric stories by, oh gosh, I'm becoming brain dead in my old age. Elric Melibonian is Michael Moorcock. The New Hone mythos, which is really awesome, which is Lankmer, if I remember correctly. Non-human deities like orcs and dwarves and stuff like that. Norse mythology and Sumerian, and they have all kinds of like plain reference stuff. Sounds really awesome, right? It's like Poseidon, right? I don't know who the guy in the background is. But when this book was written, it wasn't really designed to be a dungeon master's guide. Let's go down here a little bit further when it gets past talking about the ability scores, which we definitely need to talk about, because the reference material for the really high ability scores in here are really useful if you ever play any high-level campaigns. Let's zoom this in just a little bit more. There's two major things to think about on page 8. One of them is that all the different gods and demigods, and probably some of the big heroes in the mythologies, are going to have access to these abilities right here, okay? Like on demand, like cast at will, as you would if you're thinking of 4th edition. And some of the big ones are command, right? You have comprehend languages. They can speak any language. They can detect alignment. They can tell whether you're good, neutral evil, chaotic evil. They can gate another being from the same mythology. Like someone from Babylonian wouldn't gate in someone from Melibonian, right? They can do Gaius. I probably pronounced that wrong. But the one I really like here is teleport. This means all the gods, demigods, can just move around freely from place to place, right? There's no limit to this. And plane to plane with no error. And true seeing. So notice how it says true seeing, ask the spell, true seeing. But teleport, not ask the spell. It's like an ability. And this is something really, really important. So if you look over here on page 8, let's get this drag bar back up here. When you're running a campaign and you want to do something really cool like an Arthurian legend stuff, the goal is not to just drop a bunch of these heroes in your game world and have your players kill them, right? What you're really looking at doing is making sure that that what the players are going to do, I got this thing cutting this off, make sure I don't get in too close. What the players are doing is they use these things as influences in your game world, right? So therefore they might appear, the players might talk to them, but there's no way that they're going to have a fight with any of these characters. Now, of course, you can do that if you want. Who wants a book full of stuff that's just lore, right? And that's kind of what this is. But first and foremost, you know, divine beings are not merely super powerful humans, right? They have powers and abilities totally unavailable to any mortal. Even a human, through even using some ultra potent magic, have their ability scores raised to 20, which is unlikely and inadvisable. That person would not gain those powers that are reserved for the gods. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes, because you know, like a 25 strength and you think, oh, as a Titan and things like that. It doesn't mean that you can stack a bunch of magic items and have the same kind of abilities that the gods have. You're not really designed to use the book as, they're not just a list of armor class and hit points so the players go destroy and beat up and like, oh gosh, you're a party of 6 people are killing Zeus, right? That's not really what it's for. So when you're going to be a dungeon master, because we know how things have kind of turned with 5th edition, right? 5th edition was super casual, a lot of voice acting, popularity got into it. A lot of younger people are playing it. They have things like, they killed my big bad guy and they ruined my story, and they have this kind of possessiveness thing happening with some 5th edition players, not the old school guys. I could see that generation struggling to making a campaign where the players kill Poseidon. You know, I could just see that happening. But if you're a little bit more mature and you're old school like me, you know that that would never happen. No party would even touch Zeus and do any damage to them. If they were to even try in a form of trickery, you could just teleport away. And you can also summon stuff to come fight you and tie you up. That's an element that most people miss, and we missed it when we were 12. In our mind, we're like, we're going to do the Rainbow Bridge battle. We'll have Loki there. And we're like looking at comic books with Thor and all these kinds of things. And so our mind, having these amazing high-level gods with all their stats there, meant that we could put them in adventures and we could make up homebrew stuff and have our player characters, you know, that we were playing go in there and have big battles and maybe kill one of them and get like an amazing artifact from them, because we were children, quite simply. So that's a really key point to remember. You know, this page here is so important when you're running a divine being. You know, they're not gonna engage in combat with a bunch of mortals, right? It says here, for example, if a god enters combat, willingly or unwillingly, he or she will always attempt to avoid any situation where the god can be physically defeated. A little reflection will show that the idea of a deity fighting mortals to the death is absurd. The easiest avoidance of combat is the god's innate teleportability, which enables him or her to leave combat entirely in a blink. You got to remember that. I mean, they even did this in Star Trek, the original series. There was a couple of characters that Kirk and Spock and McCoy and Scotty all interacted with that were like little gods, and they would just vanish. I mean, they weren't going to hang out and get shot with phasers or anything, right? This teleportability makes no time or concentration during battle. The divinity just wills it to happen. So how are you ever going to, you know, you're not going to incapacitate a god so that they can't have a sense of will and get the hell out of there. So now look at the picture on the left, which is kind of funny, from Jeff D. Which dice is missing in that picture? Put a comment below and let me know. I'm not going to tell you the answer. Also, it says, you know, when the deities are engaged in combat, they can call upon any other, you know, figures from their mythology, right? They're not going to pull something from another mythology to keep it thematically connected for coherence and cohesion, I guess you'd say. They have better things to do than fight mortals. So if you're reading this, if you're thinking that you're going to make an adventure that has, you know, all the characters I've been dropping their names here in this video, that's not really what the book is about. You can do that, yes. You can do whatever the hell you want, and as most people do, right? Most people do all kinds of wacky, crazy, boundary-pushing type stuff, but that's not really the goal. The good thing is it does talks about the interactivity between clerics and deities. That's really important to read here. I mean, clerics that have a deity are going to be extremely loyal, right? It's hard to describe how most people playing clerics see, I'm a player that's a human that's going to heal my party members, but the most religious oriented people are almost fanatical about their religion, and anything to compromise their perspective of their deity it's just absolutely transgression thinking, right? They also talk about omens, and grave transgressions require grim punishments. This means that as you look through here, and if you find an interesting mythology like the Chinese one, and you want to use something with their god of war, and if someone in the party is part of an opposing god in the same mythology, there might be a big conflict between those two gods, and you're having to go do something, find some ancient artifact, rescue someone, you know, build a temple, who knows, all kinds of things you might need to do. So there's seeds for adventures, campaigns, adventures that feel really, 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 really big. There is some details here about mortality and immortality, which you can read if you ever get to that level of AD&D. when we played, even in later years in life with friends and family, we never really dealt with like building a tower and having a bunch of henchmen and building an army. We didn't want a bunch of social management and king management elements. But if you ever get to something where players ascend to a status of being divine, how resurrection works versus raised dead in this type of setting, E&D does not confer or imply everlasting existence. Immortality doesn't. So there's some things here are worth reading, and because it's a series of pages with just a bunch of crappy font, Helvetica 3 or something from 1978, people skip this and get to the pictures because the pictures are so awesome. And don't worry, we're going to show you some of the pictures too. Let's go back up to what I mentioned before about the ability scores. So in here is all the stats for hit bonus, damage bonus, weight allowance, open doors, bend bars, lift gates. Let's see if we can get this in here without being cropped. Yeah, it's cropping a touch. I'm just going to leave it back. You can probably see it okay. The statistics on all the bonuses are here, but you're really not having player characters running with 22 strength with +4 to hit and doing +10 damage, right? Because that's basically like a fire giant. And so things in D&D were balanced between the AC and the bonus to hit, and the +5 is like the best magical item that you could possibly get. You're never really going to get anything better to hit than like 8 and like the most wildest situation possible with someone with like 1800 strength. I guess like +3, +6 to damage. I mean, the best, most crazy magical items you can get in D&D are +5, right? And that's pretty insane. That's probably like a level 15 and higher character. So that is in here. But since they mentioned the bend bars, lift gates, that's, as a hill giant, stone giant, frost giant, fire giant, you may find in your Dungeon Master's Guide that when they talk about the girdle of giant strength and you break down these giants, someone might have one, right? But this is for deity. So think about how do you want to balance that kind of stuff. As I remember, I don't have it pulled up for you in PDF form. The Dungeon Master Guide has different numbers than these. So these are numbers for the deities. The same thing with intelligence, right? And the thing that's really interesting here, they have immunities that come with this raised level of intelligence, mostly around illusions and phantasm spells. So therefore, if you've got, a really great illusionist or someone casting something that's going to be an illusion or a phantasm, the god and deity is never really fooled by this, right? Illusions are a really tricky thing to run in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of mind saving throws that you can do. So I see if someone disbelieve was one of the rules that people used to do. Players at the table know it's an illusion, so it's kind of hard for them to not pretend like they know when their character doesn't know. But there's immunity here, and there's a minimum number of spells per level. So, I mean, if you're going to run an adventure and you're going to have Loki in there or something, and you got to sit down, right? You're going to need to sit down and start figuring out, okay, well, what spells would Loki have with 22, intelligence or higher? It also covers wisdom on the right, where you get some immunities, to fear, charm, person command, beguiling, domination, gaius, mass suggestion, rulership, antipathy, sympathy, finger of death, mass charm, autos, irresistible dance, which is one of the ridiculous spells. So these things you don't get as a player, but these things you'll get for your deity. So you have to remember these things, because if you have a situation where the players are going to try and challenge, one of these amazing deities or demigods, they might try these things. Oh, I want to do this. I want to cast this crazy illusion of Loki seeing Thor and Thor is mad or whatever, and so think about that kind of stuff too. And lastly, the dexterity and constitution charisma numbers are down here as well. For the dexterity, it has a defensive adjustment and the reaction attacking adjustment. If you use the default rules as written, initiative, surprise roll type stuff, the defensive adjustment is great. Notice it never really goes above -6. So if something had an armor class of 0, that would be down to -6. It does have thieving abilities here, which is kind of funny. You would think that a god of thieving would be able to do anything they wanted to do, but there are numbers here for hiding in shadows and stuff like that. These are bonuses, though. These aren't the base numbers, right? So if it says, if you have 24 dexterity, that's actually +40 to percentage to picking pockets, not a base roll of 40. So you got to think about that. Constitution has hit point adjustments, knows 1, 2s, and 3s. That's the one thing that is a rich think about doing it. Some of the people on my channel that read my Heroic House rules, which are free on my website, it costs nothing. It's free on DriveThruRPG. I have a lot of, start the players off with max hit points, right? Which is a personal rule that we evolved over the last 30 years. Like in the mid-90s, we started doing this so that level 1 characters were a little tougher, right? It wasn't to me. I mean, illusionist and monks with 4 hit points isn't that big of a deal. But 1 hit point, anyone in the game hits you and you die. We never like that. And occasionally I'll get some turds come to the YouTube channel and complain about that. But if you don't like that, you could always have this as a house rule. Like when players are rolling hit points, if you're a firm believer in rolling hit points, you could say, well, listen, you've got a character that's only got 7, hit points, and you're level 3 fighter, or you're level 10 fighter and you only have 22 hit points. You may want to consider that when the character was first rolled up, that they get this no 1s, no 2s, no 3s type thing to give it a better sense of being average at the minimum, which is, you want the players to be alive. This is something that I should go off on a tangent just for a second about. In Traveler, Classic Traveler, you can die in character creation, yeah? And there's alternative rules for that. And Mongoose Traveler also has alternative rules for that kind of stuff. But in D&D, they don't. They never really did, right? And when people were playing D&D was first designed, it was like you have a bunch of henchmen and you've got a bunch of men-at-arms and the party of 7 to 8 kids are playing D&D, each one having one character, and 3 or 4 of those kids might have 2 to 3 henchmen. I mean, you'd have like a little small Roman squad infantry unit traipsing through the Tomb of Horrors. Like, imagine 17 characters traipsing around the Vault of the Drow, in one of the tertiary passages. In the modern day, the number of people willing to sit at the table and play becomes smaller and smaller as the rules become more complicated, especially with 3rd edition. 3 and 3.5, where they added all these skills and feats and shit, right? And then you did that again, and there's all the powers in 4. And then 5e has all these powers, and Pathfinder has powers. So the last, 25 years of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons has added more character-focused powers and abilities that slow the gameplay down tremendously. It also means that you're not the magic user throwing darts in the back. Like, that's the only thing you would do in the old days, or have a light crossbow or some crap. So, the charisma number here is going to give you an awe power ability where, the person can, it's like a reverential fear or dread of overpowering if someone has 22 charisma, up to 6 Hicks dice. So no one that's level 6 is going to come over to you and attack someone with that kind of charisma. There's just no possible way they'd be terrified. So these things are in here. And so think about that stuff when you're going to go through. Okay, let's get to the fun part. I'm going to go back to this, let's go to 2-page view. And we're going to see if we can get this where you can show you some of these amazing mythologies. Every single chapter opens up with this crazy font, right? American Indian mythology, Raven Coyote. I can't even pronounce this guy. I mean, some of the names here, I don't even know how to say them. I'm not going to try because I get laughed at a lot. But the thing that's so fun is every single one of these things, almost 95% of them have a great picture. And like this one here, this Winter Spirit, armor class -2. That's not that low, but 390 hit points. And that's a greater god. His symbol is the ice spirit. He's chaotic evil. So just reading about this white-skinned deity able to bring on any kind of cold weather at will, those that sacrifice to him can often lessen the force of winter, but no one prays this evil being for fear that he will come. I mean, talk about a great plot device to have in an adventure. The American mythos was great. The Arthurian one was interesting because of, Excalibur and the crazy movie with Jean-Luc Picard in it. Remember that from the 80s? Oh gosh, that was crazy. And then these characters in Monty Python. This is a great mythology area as well, but they're not really gods. But Sir Galahad's like 120 hit points, 3 attacks per melee round, -4 armor class, but his movement rate's the same as a person. So all the pictures are very inspirational. If you read like Morgan Le Fay, and the Jeff D stuff is just so great. I've always loved Jeff D's quasi Mike Grell style art with the line shading that he does. On his line weights, he uses 3 line weights almost all the time. And this is 1980. He was probably just a kid, probably 16, 17, 18 years old, maybe less. The Babylonian mythos is fantastic. It has all the names like Gilgamesh you've heard of, but all kinds of gods and demigods are here that you may have never heard of. Love that one. Really fun. Ishtar picture is fantastic. Always great. The Celtic ones are fun, really fun. I can't remember the artist that did these pictures. They're almost like a stippling brushwork. It's really, really nice. If you want to do anything in, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, maybe even part of England, this is a fantastic section as well. This thing is popping too fast for me. Let's go back a little bit. I can just start using this button here. You've got the Celtic stuff. We'll go a little faster. Central American mythos, if you like anything with Maya, or even the Olmecs, going way back to that, or the Inca Indians. This is primarily Central America, though, because Inca was way down actually technically in South America, but hey, it's a landscape, right? Really cool. A lot of death and cool, crazy animal figures in these type of gods and demigods. The Chinese stuff is really great too. If you like Asian-oriented things, a lot of famous characters, you even see them in some movies and stuff like that. Some of them had crazy face shapes and like multiple heads. The Cthulhu stuff, I can't remember. Leave a comment if you remember. There was a time when this book was the subject of a lawsuit, and people that own these other IPs like the Cthulhu stuff, or maybe the Lancashire stuff, they made them remove it. Leave a comment if you remember what that was. I remember when it happened, but I think I bought the book when it first came out, and I've had this PDF forever. I forgot where I even got the damn thing, but I got the version that pretty much had all the original mythologies in it. Cthulhu stuff is in here. Egyptian is great. All these pictures by Jeff D are just awesome. Ra, Anhur, Anubis, Bast, Horus, Geb, Best. It's just really, really, really great. I'm saying that on every one of them, but it's really cool because it's so inspirational. So if you want to run, if you run the Desert of Desolation series, there's like a 4 massive compiled dungeon module set, almost like, the Escape from the Slave Lords, the Slaver series, and almost like the Giant series. I mean, you could inject some of these gods and goddesses into the storyline. It'd be really amazing. We'll speed things up. The hieroglyphs are really cool. The symbols of the different gods. The Finnish mythology. Finland has a lot of really awesome mythologies in here. There's heroes in here that are really cool as well. Really neat. Really, really fun. The original goddess of nature, Maliki, is in here, and it got bastardized in the Forgotten Realms, ended up being like some ranger goddess for Dredsteward. Remember that? Greek mythos, of course. Let's just go through these. Oh, wow, they're so great. I love these things. They're so fun. That was all the Greek stuff. It was like 8 pages of that. India. I mean, you have like 20 Indian gods and goddesses. Japanese stuff. You've got like 3 or 4. A lot of samurai-oriented type warrior stuff and the samurai stuff in the Japanese era. Melibonian was awesome. And I tell you, the one thing we loved the most is this horse. There is a horse in here. A Nahrain horse. I can't remember if that's how we pronounced it. Where is it? It's in. So these things are alphabetical. Here it is. A Nahrain horse, very rare, number pairing 1, armor class -2, 24 movement rate. Horse of this type appears as a great black stallion. It can shift into the ethereal plane at random times, and thus there is a 25% chance that any successful hit will not inflict damage. These creatures can gallop continuously for 2 days, 48 hours, passing with equal ease over both water and land, and flying over chasms or other impediments when necessary. Can you imagine having one of those and riding across Greyhawk? Man, with the cool stuff you could do. The alignment is neutral, right? I mean, you could potentially be a druid in a Melibonian campaign and your whole party's riding Nahrain horses. Like if you're at a high level campaign, that could be really interesting. But members of this magical race of horse will only be lent to mortals who are in the direct service of the primary forces of neutrality. So you kind of tie that up. They're not something you're going to get at an inn and pay money for, right? But talk about an incredible idea. Even the picture from DSL isn't all that amazing. The idea was incredible. I remember we ran a campaign once. Like I told you, this Rainbow Bridge Norse mythology thing, and we had Melibonian stuff mixed with it. So the Melibonian stuff mixed with the Norse mythology, and our party, each of us had these horses, and we're being sent by this one god in the Melibonian campaign. It was crazy. This is made up shit. We're little 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds. The Melibonian stuff is fantastic. Really, really neat. A lot of great Jeff D pictures there. Let's go on to the next section here. I'll use the button to make it a little faster. The New Horn Mythos is the Favorite and Gray Mauser books. They came out in the 70s. They're really, 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 really good. What was the author's name? Oh, gosh. Fritz Lieber is his name. I think he's a German author, but he could have been an American that had a Germanic name. I can't remember. You can leave a comment and say so if you remember. These are really good. Most of these were the mythology of that novel series, and the TSR did at one point adopt some Lancashire stuff and make a Thieves Guild and a bunch of supplement books, and so they kind of must have had a deal going at some point in the late 80s. But these guys are really cool, really fun, some interesting stuff in here. A lot of high level conceptual things like Leviathan and hate and gods with basic names as opposed to like these unpronounceable names. Really cool. Non-human stuff is great. Goes right into the Dungeon Master's Guide, where bugbears, elves, centaurs, aquatic elves, drow elves. I can never tell myself to say drow or whatever the other things people say. I always say drow. Whatever. You just have to forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. All the different giants in here for Garl Glitter Gold for the gnomes. It's just really, really neat stuff. So then you go further past that, you go to the Norse mythology, which is all your famous Norse guys I mentioned 50 times already in this video, which we don't do that anymore. There's Thor for you right there, a great cartoon. Rozloff's art was great too, wasn't it? I mean, some of the covers that he would do with the hatching and the detail, they'd look like woodblock prints. They were so detailed, really amazing. And Jeff D is all over this thing. He must have done like 4 pictures a day or something. The Sumerian stuff is really cool. Some really neat gods and goddesses in there. And in the very back, you have this description of the inner planes with the positive material plane, the prime material plane, which is look at this big black globe that has all the galaxies in it, which is probably infinite. Then the negative material plane, which there's a lot of things where you take damage from that kind of stuff, like healing is positive material plane stuff. And then the different ice, air, dust, water, fire for the elemental planes is described in here, the outer planes and the alignments, how the alignments work with them. Whoops, let's go back here one. Yeah, here we go. Then we had this like drawing that kind of described how the astral plane connects the inner planes to the outer planes, which is where you have these planes of alignment like Elysium and Hades, the Abyss, Limbo, Nirvana, Acheron, or Echeron, how you pronounce it, the 9 hells. So that's all in there too. So if you're going to do some kind of, ethereal traveling or plane travel, or your party ends up in this place and have to go from one place to another, the Happy Hunting Grounds is a place, right? An infinite universe for you to have a campaign in. And then, of course, in the very, very back, they have some encounter tables, which are always handy. So if you're zipping around in the astral realm, you might bump into a demon prince or a rakshasa, right? Or you might, if you're in the ethereal area, you might see a basilisk or a cockatrice or an ifrit. So these are just the inspiration and the ideas. And it's back with these deity reference charts. You got to turn on the side if you have the book in your hand. It's just a great point of reference. Really cool. It'd be neat to hear what you guys, your stories are. This is a 2013 reprint of this thing. What were your thoughts on it? What kind of adventures did you have when you were a young kid playing it? Or if you're an adult playing with your family? For me, if someone were to say, which is your all-time top three mythologies that I like for storyline, I have always really liked the Elric and Melonbone stuff. I also really like the... let me find the list here of all of them. Here we go. The Norse stuff is so classic, and the Egyptian stuff is so classic, and there's so many cool pictures of what those characters look like that I was never really drawn to the Chinese or anything like that. But I had so much reference material for Egyptians and Babylonian and Melonbonian because I'd read a bunch of the Michael Moorcock books. And the Egyptian stuff is just so dramatic and colorful and really cool. Really fun. And, so that's what we wanted to go over today. Give you a sneak peek at this book. If you don't have it, you got to get a copy of it. You can probably get yourself a PDF almost anywhere in the modern world, although I don't usually advocate for that kind of crap. But yeah, I mean, Deities and Demigods, wow, what a fantastic book. When you play D&D as a young kid, and when you get older, you have the nostalgia for playing all these other modules. Like I've done walkthroughs here on the channel for, Tomb of Horrors and the Steading of the Hill Giant Chief and the Glacial Rift Frost Giant Jarl. I always mispronounce him and call him Jarl. The classic modules, like 13 pages of awesome adventure. But when you sit down to make something really wild, really interesting and exciting, get the hell out of the Forgotten Realms, make up your own shit, connect it to Greyhawk, and get yourself on a rain horse and call it even, and have a lot of fun with it. Thanks for listening today. We'll try to create more content. We've got a little bit more time available to do it now that the summertime contract work is done. I've got a big contract I'm working on now with some guys down in the Dominican Republic and Brazil in the Web3 gaming space. Takes up a good 50 hours a week of my time, but I want to get back into making more content for you guys because I hasn't been able to do it as much as I like, but I've got more time to do it now. And we'll see you at the next one. If you haven't already, of course, just like and subscribe. Really helps the channel. I'm going to try push to grow us to 10,000 subscribers in the next 6 months. Take care. Talk to you later.